Hey guys, welcome to another live show. We are going to be talking about a couple of different things, Arsenal related, obviously. So make sure, why do I have these in? Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, and get into the chat and let me know how you guys are thinking and feeling. I want to do a little poll really quick too. So let me just pop that on really quick. You guys let me know how you guys are doing today, where you guys watching in from, and all that great and wonderful stuff. What do you wanna about first? Um, Give me 1 second, guys. I'm just putting up the poll. Um, there you go. You guys can vote on the poll and let me know what you guys would prefer to talk about first. Do you want to talk about Zinchenko and Partey potentially being back for the weekend, or do you want to talk about Osimhen first? After we talk about the Newcastle game, because we haven't had an opportunity to chit chat. And so I wanted to get your guys' feelings and stuff. So listen, we absolutely smashed them. And I didn't get a chance to watch the game live because I was working, but I was like super nervous. But then my group chat was like going crazy. Like everybody was, Gabrielle, Kivior, Kai, like the notifications just kept coming in. And I was like, wow, we're killing them. And so to have looked at the score line after the game and saw that we beat them 4-1, I was like, wow, like we actually took that game at St. James very personally, and they were definitely in for a slapping. And we owed them one, because I do feel like, you know, we have struggled to beat them since they've been taken over and since Eddie Howe has been there. I think the first time that we played them at home, it was a 0-0 draw. Then we beat them at St. James. Then we lost to them this season at St. James. And then so we definitely owed them, because we're better than Newcastle. Like, I know that they've been hyped up as like this new, British, old school team, Eddie Howe, English manager, all these English players, blah, blah, blah. But great branding and everything, but you're literally backed by Saudi Arabia, and so you do not fool me, I know what you are. And so they, have been kind of getting away with it. I also think that their players tend to get away with some really dirty tackles and things like that, because they're hashtag, you know, physical, hashtag, whatever. They're very, like, given, like, a pass for, like, doing things that you shouldn't be able to get away with. So, it was nice to smash them because they definitely deserved it. I thought, when I rewatched the game, which is very weird, I don't know, the last time I wasn't able to watch an Arsenal game live was, or, like, when the game was actually going on, was when we played against Newcastle last season. When we beat them at St. James, I didn't watch that game live either. So, it's just such an odd experience to watch it after the fact, because there is no emotion attached to it. Like, I was kind of jealous that I didn't get to watch it live, but those first 25 minutes, we were all over them. They couldn't do anything, and the commentators were just like, "Oh my gosh, Newcastle need to do this, Newcastle need to do that." And I'm just like, "They can't do whatever you're asking them to do, they're not gonna be able to do." Like, I don't know if they were surprised that we pressed them. I don't know if they were surprised that we had the energy, but, like, they just could not live with us. They could not live with us at all. And some of the passes and the moves that we were doing against Newcastle, for me, were, like, very, encouraging, because we went down the gut so many times. Like, one of my biggest, like, concerns about Arsenal is that when we're against a team that's sitting in a low block or wants to try to, like, flood the midfield, is that we just completely disregard trying to play through the middle. We don't try to pass between the lines. We don't get in between the lines. We just try to go around the houses. We went down the gut so many times against Newcastle. I don't know what they were thinking. They left that space behind their midfield open the entire time. And we just continuously got in those pockets. Like, Martinelli did it, Saka did it, Odegaard did it so many different times, and it left us free, which was great. And we probably could have scored 6, 7 goals, really, based on the chances that we had, but 4 is a very good return. We obviously got our, like, classic, like, set piece goals too. So it was a really good day, and I feel like the Emirates was really fired up for it as well because of, the drama at St. James. We definitely owed them one for sure. And it wasn't like they had, obviously they didn't have their best goalkeeper, which probably does come into play a little bit, but they definitely weren't injury ravaged the way that they have been in previous weeks. So they can't even really go into their like, well, we didn't have our best team. We also did not have our what you would consider our best team. So you just got slapped. Like it's just what it was. Like you got outplayed, you were outdone. Like we were much better than you, and we are better than Newcastle. So I loved it. Everything about the tactics were great as well. Like our tactics in the Premier League have been very, very good. Like almost every single game that we've played since Dubai has been very you know, different in the way that we've set up. Like not necessarily with the players, but the way that the tactics were done. And against Newcastle, it was no different. You just saw so much more connection. Like I said, we got in between the lines. Saka and Martinelli came a lot more central. It was just like very well done and just completely took Newcastle by surprise. And what I really loved about the first goal that we scored was there was that free flowing a bit like part of it where Martinelli got the pass from Jorginho over the top, but he wasn't like on his usual side. Like he came on the right hand side and it just moved those pieces around a lot better. And I'm like, I want to see more of that. I know we're not going to do it every single game, but sometimes it does feel like our forwards are so spread apart and so disconnected that like they're just like in this spot and they're so easy to like corral and to like stop from doing what they do the best. But against Newcastle, just seeing Martinelli pop up on that side, it was just like, okay, we have a different way of playing sometimes, which is really, really useful. And so the whole game was just like very enjoyable. Willock, of course, had to score. Whatever, it was a consolation. It really wasn't anything. But I feel like my favorite part of the game was just the fact that like the commentators in the US wanted so badly for Newcastle to be in that game, but they literally were not in it. They had a couple of little spells here and there, but for the most part, they were completely nullified. And if they haven't caught on yet, it's not that every single team that we play just isn't up for it. We literally keep them from even being a part of the game because we're incredibly dominant. And I don't know what switch was flipped, in Dubai, but this team just is just so dominant in the league. And we've seen it for 6 games now where we just keep the other team from being even a factor, whether it's Liverpool or Burnley. And so that quote that Arteta used at the beginning of his tenure when he was talking about like how he envisions Arsenal playing, always having the ball, always being in the opposition's penalty area, always dominating the the areas, all just his definition of domination is definitely what we've been seeing over the last 6 games in the Premier League. It's taken us a while to get here, and probably that journey took a little bit too long, which is why I'm still a little bit like, we probably maybe won't win the league, but at least we're in the race. But we can definitely see where this could be like added on to and made even more dominant. Like every time Kai Havertz plays up front, the main thing I think about is like, but what if that was like a world-class striker? What if that was an Osimhen or a Gyökeres or a, Sesko? Like, what if it was one of these guys up front for us that got that opportunity that Kai really should have put away? How many goals would they score? A center forward that actually really occupies the center backs, which is what I like about Kai Havertz the most when he plays at the 9. I don't think it's always the best option, but when you have somebody that literally gets in the box, makes runs beyond the center backs, makes the center backs have to think, occupies their time. They can't just put out their folding chairs and get a beer and just chill for the entire 90 minutes, which unfortunately I do feel like can be the case when we play other players in that false 9 position. Kai Havertz, make of him what you will. I know a lot of people will never be, you know, down with the Kai Havertz signing. I have my issues with it, but one thing you can't take away from him is that he definitely gives the center back something to think about. They cannot just sit back there and just have a player that's like maybe not even there or just stop them from doing anything. And so I really enjoyed his performance as well. And he did miss a sitter, but the goal that he does put away is really, really nice. And I thought overall his game was really good. So let's see what you guys are saying. Let's see. Damian Kelly says Partey, without a few games under his belt, cannot start ahead of Jorginho. And I am Thomas Partey's biggest fan. I want to talk about Jorginho in a second, but you guys know how I feel about injury prone players. I just feel like the amount like they're always put on a pedestal because you're never as good as when you're injured, if that makes sense. Like, you are at your best when you're injured because people only remember the good parts of how you played. They don't remember the times where you got absolutely ran past against Man City. They don't remember when you tried to chip it over Declan Rice and then you were the reason why we conceded a penalty needlessly during the run in. They don't remember those things. So I feel as though, like, there are certain players that are always put on a pedestal because they never play. And if we remember the reality of the player, we'll remember that in certain games they were really good, but in the big games they tend to flatter to deceive. And when if they're not in a big game messing up or in a small game playing all right, they're probably not available anyway. So Jorginho for me, two man of the match performances against Newcastle and Liverpool, and was pivotal in our game where we actually beat Man City at home, which we've never done with other players in the team. And so for him to be just cast aside for this idealistic version of a player that's never available for me is like so disrespectful. You guys know I was not a big fan of Jorginho to come in to be a part of the team or like when we first signed him, but I just feel as though like it's very unfair for him to be consistently cast aside when I've never seen certain players have that level of performance against big sides. Never. Because if they had, maybe we would have won those games. So, and when I mean the big sides, I mean Man City and Liverpool, not Spurs, who we beat every season, no matter who we have in the team, not Chelsea because we beat them all the time, not Man United because we lose to them away all the time and we win at home. I mean the big sides, Liverpool and Man City. And so for me, it's like I feel like Jorginho deserves a little bit more respect than to consistently always be cast aside for the idea of somebody that hasn't been available for more than like 400 minutes this season. So, yeah, I I feel like we should spend more time talking about players that actually play the matches and not always think about what could be with players that are never available. Or when they were, it's not even like they performed well anyway. So it's like, you know, but um Jorginho against in this game as well. Sorry, I should have put my phone on D&D. He was fantastic. Again, I think we obviously have to manage his minutes a little bit because he's not the youngest and he definitely cramped up at the end, but the 90 minutes that he gives us when he does give it to us, like I feel like we get a lot of bang for our buck. Like we only spent 12 million on him, and yes, like there were the thing is like I feel like he's had more really good moments for us than bad ones, like the one against Spurs. That's the one that stands out probably the most is, you know, in a game where, Declan Rice couldn't go the full 90 and we had to bring Jorginho in. We lost all of our physicality in midfield against Sarr and Basuma, and Jorginho makes like the worst mistake he could have possibly made and we concede. And so that stood out in people's minds. I don't think he had the best game against Chelsea either, but I honestly feel like the entire team was terrible. So it's really difficult for me to just pinpoint his performance. Um, but again, against the teams where we've really needed to like be on our top game, I do feel like he's come up big for us. I feel like it's not like he was a passenger where, when we first got him, it's like people really like, he doesn't have the legs. He doesn't have the legs. It's like the way that Arteta sets up the team and the distances that we have, we rarely in a track meet. So it's rarely a problem. Um, if you guys have watched like Man United recently, Ten Hag, the way that he sets up his team exposes the flaws of some of his players. I don't think the players that he has are as bad as what they seem like, but because he consistently exposes their weaknesses, they look 10 times worse. The distances are too big, the spaces are too large, and so because they don't have people around, they get bypassed really easily. Where maybe because Arteta was a slow midfielder that didn't necessarily have the legs, he knows how to set up the midfield in a way where players like Granit Xhaka or players like Jorginho don't get exposed so frequently in big spaces in midfield because they don't exist. So I feel like Jorginho's lack of legs is not really a big issue for Arsenal, especially because we usually play in one half of the pitch anyway. Um, but I do feel like his experience, his passing ability has been very like it has combined really well with what Declan does well. And so in games where we need a little bit more ingenuity or a little bit more penetration or whatever, that combination works so well. And it worked well against Newcastle. I wish we would have used it against Porto. I feel like maybe in hindsight, that would have been the right thing to do. I have to be honest, I wasn't like before the game feeling like that lineup would not have been able to beat Porto. But as that game went on, I think it did kind of look like we could have used a little bit more of that, whether it was from a Zinchenko or Jorginho or something. But against Newcastle, I felt again like he was amazing. I feel like one thing maybe we haven't seen from Jorginho yet is maybe this level of performance away from home against one of the bigger sides because we played Man City at home when he was out there. We played Liverpool at home when he was out there, and Newcastle was also at home. But again, he did play away from home against Newcastle last season. It did really well. So again, I really like I really like his performances, and this is again coming from somebody that didn't love the idea of us signing him, but I think he's done really well. So, hopefully he keeps it up, but I don't think we'll need him against Sheffield, which is great because we'll get to rest him a little bit maybe because I feel like Arteta will go back to the normal lineup against Sheffield, but I think he's done really well. Um, Diallo says Georgie couldn't play those 2 games back to back. Arteta chose his poison. N7 Gunner says last year, fella, it's gone. Focus on the present. I guess you guys are talking about something else. Kahinde says, Jess, I agreed with you. We have to talk about the players that are currently playing, but you're totally wrong for insinuating TP never shows up in a big game. We won Liverpool last season because TP and Spurs. Not really. I mean, you can say that he was on the pitch, but against Liverpool, that game was very, very even. I feel like there's a little bit of you're being a little bit disingenuous about it was literally Thomas Partey that won that game for us. It just wasn't. There were moments against Liverpool, especially in the second half, where we lost control of the midfield. Thiago and I think it was like Thiago, who else do they have in there? It was Thiago, Fabinho, and whoever else they had in there actually had good spells in midfield where they dominated us and we were back in our shape. And we did well to get the last goal, but it was a very even match. So I'm not sure that Thomas Partey won us that game. And again, Spurs to me, because we've won games against Spurs home, when like we've had anybody in midfield. I don't classify that as a big game. When I'm talking about a big game, I'm talking about Liverpool and Man City. And when you look at the span of since Thomas Partey has been an Arsenal player against Man City and Liverpool, not only have we only won one of those games while he started, which was last season, he has been diabolical in a lot of those games and or missing. So to me, like I feel like for somebody that came in with such notoriety and such a high standard, somebody that people consider one of the best DMs in the league, there's not a lot to go off of when we talk about the games that actually matter. Because if all you can really name is the Liverpool game where it was quite even and we got the goal and Spurs away, then in 4 years, that's just not good enough. For 45 million release clause, it's just not. So, but you have somebody that came in and has only been here for a year and has played cost us 12 million and again has been man of the match in multiple of those games. And we won our first game against Man City in the league since Mikel Arteta has been here with Jorginho on the pitch. So again, like I think you're really grasping and like we've had this conversation a lot because I know people really want to back Thomas Partey for whatever reason, but if he was any other player, I feel like people would be a little bit more realistic about what we've actually gotten for that 45 million. Lots of injuries, some really poor showings against the best sides in the league. I don't, he plays well against the smaller teams and dominates. And he had one really good season at Arsenal last season where he was available almost the entire time. But again, when we got into the run in, he had some of the worst performances against Southampton. He was one of the worst performers against Man City. He was one of the worst performers against West Ham. He was really like the reason why we conceded that penalty. So I'm just taking all that into consideration. I'm not saying Jorginho is better than Thomas Partey, but what I am saying is that instead of maybe every single time that we win a game talking about Partey, talk about the players that actually played the game. Jorginho deserves a lot of credit for being available and helping us win those games, where it feels like Thomas Partey is still getting a lot of credit for doing a whole lot of nothing. And I'll be honest with you guys, I don't think we're going to see Thomas Partey again. So, um, so we'll see. Um, and there's also like the moral aspects of things as well that I feel like people forget even happened, which is very strange to me. Um, and it's not something that I talk about on the channel because obviously like you can get in trouble for it. But the fact that some people just completely ignored that, like it never happened for me is also pretty disgusting. So yeah, Lucas says, agree, Partey was not the difference in that Liverpool game. He really wasn't. Like, I don't know what to tell you. That was a very even game. It could have went either way. We got the additional goal, which was great, but we definitely like we didn't struggle in midfield, but it was a very even battle in midfield. I remember feeling like we were losing the midfield battle at certain points. Like Thiago and Fabinho were getting the better of Odegaard and Thomas Partey at certain points. So, but again, like everybody has their own reality. If you think Thomas Partey has been the difference for us in a lot of big games and you feel like he's our best player and all this type of stuff, fine. But I will always stand 10 toes down on the idea that like we need to focus on the players that are actually winning these big games for us and not always like disregarding their performances or disregarding the performances of the people that are actually out there. I feel like it's very disrespectful. And the last time I showed like the list of all the big games that Thomas Partey was not a part of, people attacked me for it. And I'm like, why would you attack me over showing that somebody that was a major signing for us? Like he really was a major signing for us. I think people forget that like 45 million for Arsenal back then was very expensive, especially a release clause. Like we literally had to go to Atletico and like with a briefcase full of money. Like it was a very big signing for us. It was a prime age guy that was supposed to be the answer to our DM problems, and he hasn't really been that. So I just keep all that into perspective that I feel like the idea of him is better than the reality of him, and people often sit in the reality because we don't have to watch him play. You're like the way that we talk about players that don't actually play the games is actually insane. Like I genuinely feel that way. But and I keep the same energy with Jesus and Zinchenko and Tomiyasu and all these guys because ultimately their injuries tend to kill our season every time. So yeah, I rate Thomas Partey in terms of like the player that he is, and I do think that if he was playing to the best of ability, his ability consistently, he would be considered one of the best DMs in the world. But because we don't see that, it's really hard for me to like be in fantasy land with some of you guys. So yeah, I really I get it. Like I get that people love him, but like be serious. Sample says, Jess, it was only after Partey entering the pitch that we successfully opened City at the Emirates. Yeah, but the game is not 30 seconds. It's really not. Like he made the pass, but also, so do you want to also say that Kai Havertz was instrumental in that, and Tomiyasu and Martinelli, because they were all instrumental in that goal, not just Thomas Partey coming off of the bench for 10 seconds. And Jorginho was a part of the team that was actually out there for almost the entire game. I think he almost played the entire 90 minutes. So again, like making one pass does not mean that you were pivotal in that win, because there was still a team that had to keep a really good City side from getting through and scoring against us, had to keep us in the match. So no, Jorginho was pivotal in that game. Thomas Partey played a part, a very small part that also included Kai Havertz, Tomiyasu, and Gabriel Martinelli. So to me, it's still reaching. And I still don't understand why he's so infallible. I still don't understand why he's so infallible. I'm trying to understand it. Like if somebody can explain it to me like a child, why it is the fact that like this person is so like people cannot see a life without him or cannot see a good Arsenal team without him. That would be very helpful to me, because I'm very much so like once you've been injured for so long and once your injuries have impacted us in a negative way so often, I start to write you off, because it's like you're not available. But some people feel like his inavailability is like not a big deal. And I feel like for the better players that are so important to us, like Jesus and Partey, I feel like it should be opposite of like the energy that I see for Tomiyasu, the energy that I see for other people, who are less important to what we're trying to do. You know, I just wonder what it is about this player. Um, that's all. I just want to know what it is. But I really do think Jorginho deserves a lot of credit for the performances that he's putting in because we're getting a lot for a player that cost us so little that I don't think anybody really wanted Jorginho at the club. I would say maybe like 95% of us didn't want him, including me. So I'm very surprised by the performances that I'm seeing. Like I'm very impressed by what he's been able to give us, in terms of like he's only been here for a year, and he's done very well, so despite the fact that sometimes he can look like an old man out there, I think he's been a really good signing for us. So hopefully he keeps that up because I think he is going to be important to us when we go, to the Etihad, when we go to Old Trafford. I think he's going to be important for us in those games because our big game lineup, I do think, includes him in it, until further notice. So, um, yeah, he was really, really good against Newcastle. I don't even know what else to say. I think he was really good. Let's see. Arca says, I don't see us getting an 8 if 3 of El Neni, ESR, Partey, Jorginho don't get sold. Let's see. Jordan says, Partey is our Thiago. Liverpool fans have given up on that guy, as exceptional as he is, and we must do the same with Partey. And I've seen that before. Like Liverpool fans do not have any time for Thiago Alcantara. They don't. They don't have any time for him. There are some that I've seen that are like, wait till he gets back, but most of them have pretty much written him off because he's been injured the whole time he's been there. And when you look at him and just on paper, you would consider Thiago Alcantara to be probably one of the best midfielders in the league and definitely one of Liverpool's best midfielders. But, I think if they were to choose for a final tomorrow who they would want in their midfield, they choose Endo over Thiago because at least Endo is available. At least Endo is there. So I think sometimes, like, again, the idea of somebody is a lot better than who they actually are. And Thiago is, I think I would write him off as a flop for Liverpool, in terms of what they invested in him, what they expected of him, and what they've gotten has definitely been more of a flop than anything else, despite him being a world-class midfielder when he's fit. But we don't really have the same energy. And like, it's not like it's Man City, it's Liverpool. It's a team that has the same resources as us. Um, and they seem to be able to move beyond a player that's never available, where we don't seem to be able to do that, which is strange to me. Um, so yeah. But yeah, I'm excited. So let's talk a little bit about let's see what you guys voted for. Um, you guys want to talk about Zinchenko and Partey, so we'll talk about that first. So there, I think Simon Collins said that they might be available for um let's see, they might be available for Sheffield. So let's see. Yeah, Zinchenko and Thomas Partey both hoping they can make Arsenal squad for Sheffield this time next week. Mikel Arteta admitted that they were close to making the Newcastle game. Arsenal had one recognized defender on the bench at the weekend, which I think is a really important point because we are definitely at the bare bones when it is considered like our back line, like especially in the fullback positions. Like it's Ben White and Kivior, and there's no other options because we don't have anybody available. So I think one, that says a lot about how important Kivior's form has been to us, because if he wasn't playing well, I think we'd be in a whole world of trouble. We know that our fullbacks are so important to the way that we play. Um, I think our fullback positions are harder than like every other position except for the lone six in Arteta's system because you have to do so many different things. And Kivior did struggle a little bit in the beginning. He had mixed performances, but I think lately they've been pretty consistent, and he's added something to the back line. So I'm happy that he's been available. That being said, we really need to get, Zinchenko and Tommy back fit. I'm not considering Timber because like he's an asterisk on the side. Like if he were to come back, that'd be a cherry on top. But the players that could actually, I think, make a huge difference for us, like, right now, are the players that have probably been playing this whole season, if that makes sense. So, Zinchenko is one of them. Everybody has an opinion on Zinchenko. Some people really like him, some people really hate him. I think he's a little bit of like a, what is the thing that you guys eat that, like, either you like it or you don't? What is it called? Marmite, right? You either like it or you really like him or you really don't. Um, I tend to sit on the really like him, group, where I like what he does on the ball. And I think it's so useful to us. And I think it would have been useful to us against Porto, but we didn't have him. I'm not trying to shit on Kiwi or anything, but we know that they're two completely different players. So it'd be nice to get Zinchenko back in the fold to give us something different. Still don't want him in every single game. Still feel like in certain matches we're going to have to go with our big game group. But to have somebody with that level of progressive passing and creative passing in his locker, I still feel like is really important for this team. So with Timber not being involved, so I'm happy to see that Zinchenko will probably be maybe back for Sheffield. Thomas Partey is a little bit of a different one because I, it, if he was on the bench, I'd be so surprised, just because that's all I'm gonna say. I'd be very, very shocked. But it's been a long time. He's the last time we saw him was against City, and it was very odd how things have happened. Like, just thinking back, like he had like the couple of minutes against City, um, won the game for us, like some of you guys are saying. And then against Chelsea, made the bench but didn't come off the bench. Jorginho started that game, and Thomas Partey did not come off the bench, but he was on the bench. I remember because Fabio Vieira didn't make the bench, and then we just never saw him again. He didn't go to Sevilla with us. Um, I think it was, away, and then we just never saw him again, and he keeps getting close and then having some sort of injury setback, keep getting close, injury setback. So, um, we'll see if he's back, but any player that we can get back at this point helps us, so when I say that, I have a very specific view on injury prone players, that doesn't mean that I don't think that they will add something back to the team. I just don't hold my breath that they're going to play a major role because I know another injury is right around the corner. Um, is that just how it goes? But having those two players back in the fold with Jesus already being on the bench is so good for us because I do feel like on paper, most people, if you wrote down our best 11, Zinchenko may not be in it, but Thomas Partey and Jesus is in it for a lot of people. So bringing back starting level quality to your bench when our bench has been Kids and Cedric and Elneny can only be positive for Arsenal. Can only be positive, So this is very good news, especially ahead of like a Sheffield game, which, like, I'm not writing Sheffield off, but I'm writing Sheffield off. Like, we should be beating them by loads of goals. They're fighting amongst each other. The last thing they want to see on Monday, next Monday, is Arsenal coming to town. They are in the pits, that team. So we should be whacking them up. We really should be. So if we could get some minutes, if they could make the squad and make the, travel with the team and we could get them 10, 15, 20 minutes, that would be very, very good, knowing that we're going to have to play against Brentford at home, which would be a game that we should be winning, but, it's fine. And then we have Porto at home, which I think a lot of people would like to see some of our better players return, for that game. So if you're going to come back, this is a perfect time to do it. It's time for some of these players to start maintaining some level of fitness. It's just been very stop start for Jesus and Thomas Partey in particular. So it'd be really nice to see them back in the fold, but we'll see what happens with that. Let's see what you guys have to say. Foxy says, congratulations on the win. Was obvious to see an easy defeat for us, especially the way Howe set up. Amateurish, could have been 7 or 8 if you had a natural goal scorer. Very interesting thing there because you're a Newcastle fan. I'll be honest, I didn't see the slapping, but I'm glad that we did slap you because I feel like you deserved one from us. So yeah, but Newcastle have had a strange season, because it started off with, like, I think beat the hell out of Aston Villa on, like, the first day of the season or something like that, and, like, tons of mixed results. Had that big moment against PSG in the Champions League, went out of the Champions League, went through injury. Like, if there's anybody that probably had the worst injury problems this season, it was Newcastle because it was like everybody was out at one time. Now you guys are kinda getting your players back, but I guess it's just a race to see if you guys can get any level of Europe, from now. But very interesting season for you guys. Winning Way says, "Sesko ain't that guy yet, doesn't do enough in big matches for me." Let's see, and Andromeda says, "Go, go," is back, Partey, Tamiyasu, and Timber. Mr. Happy says, "Some fans don't rate Zinni, also don't rate Odegaard, want Arteta out, love Tierney and Guendouzi, very strange." Um, I rate Zinchenko, you can rate a player, but also recognize that they're not going to be somebody that's going to be maybe an all-weather player for us. Like, we have certain players in our team that no matter what's going on, they're gonna be the best option. Zinchenko is just not gonna be that for us, and quite frankly, I also think Jesus is in that category for us now. The speed at which we've kind of not moved beyond them, but we've gotten into position where we see that we need something different is a lot faster than I envisioned. When we first brought them in, I thought they would be long-term members of the squad slash stopgaps in a way because they have such clear and obvious limitations. But their technical level is so great that a team that lacked that was definitely always gonna like do so well when you put those 2 in the team, and I still feel like there are certain games where when they do play, you do see that that level is so much higher than like a Kivior, Tommy, or Kai or whatever, because they're technical players, like, they just are. So, you know, I do rate both of them very highly, but you can rate a player and feel like they're great for the team, but also recognize that, like, there are very obvious upgrades we can do in that position. And I feel like Timber could potentially be that for the left back position. Um, and then we still need to buy the striker, which we'll talk about in a second. And that's just the truth. Um, to me, Blaze says, even if we don't like them, but Partey, Zinchenko, and Gabriel Jesus are still important players for us. We need them, especially in big games coming later. And the thing is, it's like, it's not even about like disliking the people, like, or the players or whatever. I don't know them to dislike them or whatever. I just feel like for them to be so important, like you're saying, they're still important players for us, the inability to stay fit is so frustrating. And that frustration just is something that I don't think we should go through for multiple seasons because we have opportunities to move beyond these guys. But in this season where we are right now, from now like March to the end of the season, getting any of them back for like hopefully like the rest of the season is great for us. Like people were saying, Jorginho, he can't play multiple games a week. So obviously, like Thomas Partey would ease that. Gabriel Jesus does give you something different that maybe we could have used against Porto. So yeah, they're definitely important. It's not about disliking the players or anything like that. It's the level of like consistent frustration because they're not available, but they are so important to the team. And I just feel like we need to be realistic about that. Audrey says Zinchenko is a nice tactical option, but I'm really content with Kivior plus inverting Ben White. Um, I would say that like if I had to just rank like the 3, like taking Timber out for like our left back position, Tomiyasu, Kivior, and Zinchenko, I would still probably go like this may be an unpopular opinion. You guys can let me know in the comment section, like what you guys think I would genuinely want to know. But I still feel like maybe I would go Tommy Zinchenko Kiwi still. Um, and I know that's going to be unpopular, but I just feel like Kivior has shown really good level in a short period of time, but I know exactly what I'm going to get from Zinchenko. And so even though I know that the defending aspect of things is not going to be great, I've also, I feel like what he adds going forward is something that I would really want. Um, and then Tamiyasu, I feel like, is our best all around option because he's our best 1v1 defender, I feel like. with Gabriel being second, and then what he adds going forward, if he does get going, is pretty good, So I think I would go Tommy, Zinny, Kivior, but there's not a lot between them, if that makes sense. So yeah, I like what Kivior is giving us now, but if I had a fit Tomiyasu available to me, I think I would start him tomorrow if I could. Because the level that Tommy was showing before was great, but again, like he's another one that we just can't keep fit. So there's that. Um, let's see. Um, MM says, for what Mikel wants, I agree. Kivior can invert like the two. He can't, but but Arteta, the best thing that he ever did was recognize that after Fulham, Kivior couldn't do it and just said, forget it. Just stop trying to make him do things that he cannot do. Not a single player on the planet can do what Zinchenko is doing. And we're watching other teams try to replicate it with their fullbacks. I've seen, Fat Ant try to do it with Poro. I've seen Ten Hag try to do it with Dallo. It's an idea that only certain players can really replicate, and I think you have to be a little bit more cautious with the inverting with certain players, and Kivior is definitely one of them. You just cannot expect him to do anything like what Zinchenko does. And like we found immediate because Ben White, that's why he's so special, and why I feel like when people are like, I don't rate Ben White, I'm like, you're tapped, because we feel like because Ben White does the right back thing so good and has like transitioned from a center back to a right back so seamlessly that we actually feel like Kivior and Tomiyasu should be able to do it easily as well. He's a special footballer. So the things that he learns and can do can learn and then do at a high level in a very quick way is like not normal, you know? And maybe Arteta felt like Kivior would be able to do it like Ben White, but he just can't, because Ben White is a fantastic footballer. So he can overlap. He can play more like a center back. He can invert. He has a good passing range. Like the best thing about Ben White being inverted has been seeing his passing range is a lot more than what I feel like we remember, because he hasn't really been doing that as much. So yeah, I feel like Ben White inverting has been a revelation, which I'm glad that Arteta clocked, because Kivior is doing a lot better because of it. It all works together. So yeah. Um but yeah, he's Kivior has done a really good job so far. But yeah, I still think Tomiyasu is better, but like Mr. Happy said, Tomiyasu's injuries are fucking annoying. And I'm starting to lose patience with him. And that's just the reality, is like, come on. You know, we need players that are ready, like, and can play multiple games a week. Mara says, Cecil on AFTV interview said Tony was at the Emirates watching the Newcastle game. I can't help but feel we can do better for F's sake. Let's talk about that for a second. I don't want Tony, and I've given many reasons why. But my main thing is, I feel your same way. I feel like we can do better. I feel like he's an easy choice, an obvious choice. He is gagging for the freaking move, and he's desperate for it. He's English and he's Premier League proven. So I feel like some people want him more based on the fact that they feel like he's a no fail. It's like he's going to come straight in, and there's not going to be a level of like foreignness to it where, when you bring in players from other leagues, it's like they have to really adapt. And I think a lot of Arsenal fans are afraid to bring in like someone and have to deal with like the Nunez of it all, where it took Darwin Nunez a long time to score as like his first goal in the league. Like they don't want that. They want somebody that they feel like is going to #hit the ground running. And I guess my caveat to that, or like my, devil's advocate to that, is a little bit like, do you want somebody that hits the ground running but has a very clear ceiling to them? Or do you want somebody that will need to be a little bit more patient with, let's say, for 3 months, but from that 3 month to, infinity, however long we have them, they have the potential and they can reach world-class levels. You know, would you want a higher ceiling with a longer adaptation, or do you want a shorter adaptation with a very clear ceiling? That's what I would have on offer. Which one do you want? And some people will argue it to blue in the face that Tony does not have this clear ceiling, and I'm like, do you actually believe he's going to get any better than what he is right now? He will maybe score more goals for Arsenal because he's in a better side, but he's not going to get that much better. He's 28. He's not getting that much better. And the player that I watch when I watch Brentford play is a good player, but is definitely never going to be a world-class player or somebody that is going to give us the Kane effect or the Aguero effect or the Lewandowski effect. He's not going to be that guy. He's just not. And personally, that's what I feel like Arsenal need and deserve. Best in class. And our striker, our main creator, our DM, our wingers, our center backs have got to be top 3 in their position for Arsenal to compete with Man City and Liverpool and Real Madrid in Europe. We cannot have guys that are like, we're kind of carrying them a little bit or they're just there, you know, because that's kind of what we have right now. And so for me, like, he's the easy choice, but Arsenal don't need to make the easy choice. We need to make the right choice. We need to make the best choice. And the best choice for me would be somebody like that can be a top 3 striker in the world, you know? And so you either have to make an educated, gamble on a Sesko or an Evan Ferguson, who I wouldn't want, or somebody like that, a Xerxes, or you get one of the more established guys and hope that they can reach the levels that maybe they, you've seen them be able to do in their club team, like a Gigaris or maybe a Vlahovic or an Isak or something like that, So I would prefer Arsenal do that. I just feel like Tony is such a cop out, and we will end up being like, damn, like we're really out here taking Tony to the Bernabeu. Like, you know? So that's my feeling on it. Now, let's talk about Osimhen, because Ben Jacobs has actually said that Arsenal are very much so in the race for Osimhen. Ben Jacobs is very like close to Chelsea, so I'm like a lot of his angles are usually like towards Chelsea, which is interesting. But he said Chelsea and Arsenal remain in the race for Victor Osimhen, according to Ben Jacobs' sources, who claim the striker's priority is to move to the Premier League. So we saw that PSG would probably, when Mbappe goes, want to replace him with Osimhen, which would be a good landing spot for him, in my opinion. But if he wants to go to the Premier League, then Arsenal and Chelsea seem like the most obvious answers, because his ass is going to want to be in London. I just feel like he's going to want to be in London. Let's be serious, and then he's a lifelong Chelsea fan. And then you have Arsenal in London, who are the best team in London, who are going to have Champions League, who are going to be competing at the top level and have an obvious spot available for somebody like him. I don't think Liverpool and Man United are in the same wavelength there, So you have him you have Arsenal as the option. Now, Ben Jacobs did say that like no one will really pull the trigger on the release clause, and this is something I've been trying to explain, but I don't have the right maybe vocabulary for it, but you can always negotiate outside the release clause. The release clause is almost like an insurance policy that you get something in and around that figure, but you can always negotiate. Like for Napoli, they're like, well, we could get 100 million right away, or we can say we'll take 120, but we'll stagger the payments. So you're going to get more, but you guarantee that at the very minimum, you're going to get 100 million. So, and for Arsenal and for Chelsea as well, a release clause is not going to work. You're going to have to do something outside of the release clause. It's going to have to be a staggered payment. It's just going to, so that makes it a little bit more attainable for Arsenal to get that done, but also to address the positions that we all know still need to be addressed. You need to get like a top quality striker. You need to get a winger that can replicate what Martinelli and Saka does on a regular basis, and you still need to get a midfielder. The good thing about Kivior maybe coming into form and showing that he can play at our level is that we won't have to rebuy that left back, left center back thing, because for me, we bought it over and over again. And if Kivior Timber, Tomiyasu, and Zinchenko are all there, I don't feel like we need to go and buy that position again. Um, I'm sure Arsenal will still look at some sort of center back to play center back, but it would take away a need to have to do something like that, because Arsenal 100% need to spend the majority of whatever the budget is on the striker and winger scenario. I do feel like we're missing maybe it sounds harsh, but maybe some star quality up there. You guys will let me know what you think, but Osimhen has kind of always been to me like the template of what we need in that position, but I'm also not totally wedded to it because he would be expensive and he is injury prone. And you guys know I don't want an injury prone guy because I don't want there to be a scenario where we're relying upon Havertz and Jesus to continue to be our center forward options because we're already doing that now. And so I'm actually going to take a look at his injury record because I think it is pretty shocking. Um, and he's not old. Like, he's a young player that's consistently getting, yeah, it's a long rap sheet here. Had a shoulder injury, and from 2017-18 into 2020-2021, like it's continual. He had the head injury in 2020. He had a calf strain, broken cheekbone, coronavirus. So some of these are like one-offs, like a broken cheekbone or coronavirus. But he had the calf strain and the muscular problems, the hamstring, the abductor, muscle fatigue, hamstring, abdominal problems, and fitness. So consistent muscle injuries means that he's going to be like Thomas Partey, Zinchenko, guys that continuously get the calves, the muscles, these things, and that is really frustrating because it keeps them out regularly. So far this season, he's missed about this season, he's missed 7 games. So that doesn't seem like a lot, but I think some of that is because, like, some of these were during, like, international breaks or whatever, but he had a hamstring muscle injury that he was out for 42 games this season or 42 days this season. So it's something to keep an eye on. Do you wanna spend, um, 100 and something million on a player that you already know is going to have these problems. Now, people will say Gundogan overcame his injury issues, but Man City only had to pay 100 or 20 million for Gundogan. We're talking about 100 million for a player, and we're a club that traditionally, if there is the worst case scenario with an injury, we will get it. We're not going to get the Gundogan scenario. We're going to get the situation that we have now, where we had somebody like Thomas Partey that had never gotten injured before, and he became a sick note overnight. So we have to take that into consideration. So he's the template for the type of striker that personally I feel like Arsenal would need. Pace, physicality, traditional number 9. I don't feel like we need anybody that does the false ninery because we already have enough players that can do that. So to rebuy a player that's main qualities are outside the box for me is like, why would you do that? You need a clinical striker, the type of person that the chance that Kai does not puts that away 99% of the time. And I don't really care what he did for Nigeria because I'll be honest with you, I don't think international football is the greatest determinator in terms of how they're going to be for club football. You have to look at what they do for their club. So an Osimhen, an Isak, maybe Xerxes maybe looks like that type of player. Sesko, these guys have the pace and the physicality and stuff to run beyond the defense, to make the center back's life hell, you know. But they still have different qualities. Like Xerxes and Isak are a little bit more playmakery in the way that they do things, So yeah, that's the difference between them and Osimhen. I don't think Osimhen is the playmaker type. Like he's a very traditional number 9. So it just depends. But Osimhen does seem like he's still on the list or somebody that we're looking at as like maybe like the number 1 option or, the star player or, for the summer. But there's also like Chelsea, which he is like a Chelsea boy, I think through and through, so I could still see him going there because they'll pay him, but the wages are like 250,000 pounds, which Ben Jacobs said that that's what he wants is 250,000 pounds per week. And we have a player right now who doesn't play very often that is getting those wages that we could technically get rid of and give Osimhen those wages. So yeah, I feel like it's definitely doable at those wages. It's doable in terms of if you can negotiate around the fee. It's just whether or not he's so hell bent on going to Chelsea that he's willing to be 10th, So there you go. Let's see. Yo-Yo says pace and aerial ability is a minimum. Swagger is a necessity. I like, we talk about the audacity and the aura and the personality of somebody that's going to be a striker for Arsenal. They kind of have to have Aubameyang's attitude. They have to. And Aubameyang and Henry, a Van Persie, like they kind of have to have that. Even like an Adebayor. I don't think we need a shy guy. I don't think we need somebody that's going to fit in with the Odegaards and the Kais and these kind of guys. Like we have a lot of these shy guys in the team that do a good job of like working for the team. They show up, they work hard, they do the tactics, they do all that. Arsenal are truly missing a villain in the team, somebody that the opposition hate to play against. Saka is gaining a little bit of that, but he's still the sweet Saka. Like he just really is. Like if Arsenal are going to bring in a striker, they have to be somebody with the audacity to show up and score the goals that matter. And so who is that going to be? Is there a young player that can potentially become that? Or is there a player that's already kind of like on the cusp of that, but just needs to be at a bigger club? That's what we need to look at. But I agree with Yo-Yo as well on the pace and aerial ability. Getting somebody with no pace just feels like stupidity to me when we lack pace in our front line. Either you have to get a like super fast winger or the striker needs to be fast. One of those, if not both, need to have speed. So pick, but getting somebody that doesn't have it wouldn't be ideal, but it also depends on the player. I do like Icarus a lot. I've spoken about him many times. He doesn't necessarily have the pace, but if you got a fast winger, then it would make up for him not having the pace, but he has all the other things, the aerial ability, the ball striking, the audacity, the sheer goal scoring ability. Somebody who right now has 30 goals already for this season. Even if you took half of those away, he would still be ahead of 90% of the strikers in the Premier League if you want to take away Portuguese league tax. So when people are like, oh my God, Jessica, you're so crazy for looking at Gyökeres or liking Gyökeres, I'm like, I'm not though. I'm looking at players that are actual goal scorers. And if he just happens to play for a team that's not in the top 5 leagues, but is the Portuguese league, which we know that league translates very well to the Premier League, I'm not crazy. I'm not. He scores goals. Like he scores goals. That's all he cares about. But even though he really just cares about scoring goals, he also gets quite a few assists, so I don't feel like Gyökeres is that bad of a shout. I genuinely don't. But if you get him, then you have to get a Neto or something like that to offset the fact that he doesn't have the pace. He's very much so like in the Kane mold, pre-Kane mold in like 2015-ish time. Not so much the dropping back deep playmaker one that we see now, more of like the true goal scorer one that we used to see back then. So, yeah. And I know people are like, oh, well, Gyökeres was in the championship. So was Vardy. So was Kane. So are a lot of the best strikers that we've seen have come out for the championship. That's not a reason not to get a player. It's just genuinely not. It's actually a really good thing if somebody can play well in the championship, because that is a league that I also think translates very well to the Premier League, because you know how to play in English football, which we know is traditionally way more physical than other leagues like the Bundesliga and leagues like that. They're not as physical as English football. So the championship for me is never going to be a reason not to bring in a player, which is something that I also like about Ivan Toney. He came up from the championship. He knows what English football is all about. He's proven in the Premier League. He just has a very obvious ceiling and doesn't necessarily strike me as somebody who's going to get 30 goals, 25 goals. He's not that guy, so the championship is not a reason. It's not a reason. Yeah, it just isn't. Mr. Happy says 80 million though. I expect us to spend between 80 and 100 million on the striker, genuinely, because strikers are so expensive. They know that if you feel like this person is going to score 20 something goals a season, they're so valuable in this market. The only thing that's hurting some of these guys' valuations is that there's going to be so many good options available to you. Sesko, Gikaris, Xerxes, Isak will probably be available too for the right fee. Osimhen, there's so like Evan Ferguson, all these people are going to be available. Right now, if you want to get a number 9, it's a very good time to shop. So you may be able to, leverage that a little bit, that you can look other places, but I expect us to spend quite a bit. And for people that are like, he has 100 million release clause, again, like I just spoke about with Osimhen, you can always negotiate outside of a release clause. You don't have to spend the full release clause. What a release clause does most of the time for a selling club is it guarantees you're going to get at least something around the 100 million. But the reason why Arsenal are able to afford a Declan Rice at 100 million is because you can stagger the payments. So staggering payments is so normalized. It's something that I feel like a lot of football fans just still are not really taking into consideration, is that if you have to spend, 20 million over 5 years, that's very affordable for Arsenal. So a release clause guarantees a certain fee, or roundabout, but you can always negotiate around it. So we're probably not going to get the release clause for Osimhen or have to spend the release clause on a Gikaris. We'll negotiate around it, but we are going to end up having to spend around 80 to 100 million on the striker. It's just the reality. I don't see a way around it unless you go get somebody that's not that good. And I don't actually think we should even be caring about that because we haven't even invested up front yet. We've done the bare minimum in terms of buying up front. So just like midfield, where we really invested in the right player for midfield, or, we spent the money on Thomas Partey when we really didn't have it, I fully expect us to do the same up front. We haven't invested. So I feel like the majority of the money should go there. So figure out a way. We have tons of players we can sell, sell the players, start off with 115 million that we always have and just go from there. I don't really believe that Arsenal should be thinking about spending like 40 million on a striker right now. So yeah. Jordan Davis says Sesko not only scores goals, but his movement off the ball is elite for his age. A project, but a good project because he's going to be very good, Sesko. It's just a matter of whether or not we should be looking to do a project right now because, again, we have not invested up front yet. So technically, should we go for the project? Keenan says Sesko is probably going to cost 90 million. RB system doesn't mess about. Damien says Ferguson cannot make Brighton starting team. Not for us. We don't want potential. We want ready now type of player like Isak. At the right age, he screams Arsenal, Jesus Christ. He's also very injury prone too, though. So keep that in mind. He will not be available. We'll still be relying upon Jesus and Havertz to play up front for us. Mr. Happy says, Jess, how much would you be willing to go for regarding Gikaris? Like 65, 75 million, something around there. I feel like that's more than, thinking about what they got for Nunez, something around that. I think Nunez was like 68 million, but obviously you had the add-ons and all that type of stuff. But I think the base was like 68 million from Benfica. So something in that region. I expect us to spend big on a striker. Nuances of Fate says Xerxes has crazy potential. Please let's stay away from Jonathan David. I didn't even mention him because, again, aerial ability is so important. We need somebody with height and strength and all that. And like to get another 5'9" striker, I feel like would be so stupid. Arca says Osimhen, then Sesko and Gikaris. I don't really see us getting anyone else. Lionite says, forget it. Sporting Club won't sell for less. He's cooking now. We'll see. I do think they will negotiate outside the release clause. Most teams do, Damien says Sesko is hype and potential. We should get Neto, Isak, Diamande, and Fofana. Excuse me. I think Sesko is going to be really, really good. He's just not, he wouldn't be top of my list because he's a lot of potential. Neto, he's also injury prone, but, I don't know. If I had to go, if I feel like we're gonna spend a shit ton on the striker, then I'd be, like, down for Nico Williams just because I know he's less injury prone and, he's gonna be somebody that it just depends on how you view Martinelli. I feel like a lot of this is how Arteta views Martinelli. If he views Martinelli as somebody that's an upgradable option on the wing, and he wants to go big on the winger, then you go get Pedro Neto and take the risk, I guess, because he's definitely somebody that I feel like if he came to Arsenal tomorrow, he could start in a week. Um, I think he has I think Neto obviously has more potential on the wing than Martinelli. That's my feeling. And I feel like that's also why Arsenal were willing to spend almost 85 million on um Madrid is because Arteta's willing to upgrade. I don't feel like we would have spent 85 million on Mudryk as a guy to just be on the bench. But if you think Martinelli and Saka are your starting wingers for eternity, then you want to bring in somebody that's probably not going to cost you 80 million. Maybe a 50 million would be better, which is Nico Williams. So it depends. It depends, how the club view Martinelli. If I had to guess, um, I think they view Martinelli as an upgradable option on the wing. But that's just me. Audrey says we should not sell Gabby Jesus. He's solid front three depth, can rotate anywhere. For me, one more year for Gabriel Jesus. I wouldn't sell him this summer. Yo-Yo says Neto benches Martinelli, no question. You said it, not me. Winning Way says Leao for 80 million. This guy destroys back lines, taking 2 or 3 players out of the game. I love how direct he is. I feel like one of the things about Leao is that he usually ends up being everybody's number one choice after weeks of not doing anything. He goes through these runs of like not doing anything and people pretend like he's not doing it. And then when he scores a golazo like he did this weekend, then we're all talking about him again. He is a very talented player that needs to leave AC Milan. But my concern about Leao is that we'd be going back into the one player in the team not really doing the rest of the work. And I'm not sure that's the Arteta way. I'm not saying it's the wrong way. A lot of teams have players in their team that they let them kind of do nothing in terms of defense and all that kind of stuff and just create for that guy or just allow them to be the main focal point or whatever. Real Madrid do it all the time. They don't do any of the shit we do. We in Man City do. They don't do any of that. Vinny and these guys just stay up front and do what they're supposed to do, and everybody else works hard. So I'm not sure that he fits Arteta's ethos, and I don't know that I would buy him instead of going after a big striker because he's going to cost a shit ton. So he would end up being the striker signing. And I don't know if that's what I would do, but I don't know. Leao is not my favorite. But I see it. Like I really see what people see. Like I'm not saying that I don't think he's a real talented player. He wouldn't be my first choice based on what I feel like we need. Arca says, yeah, but in Arteta's system, the wingers have to press and striker can have a little bit more leeway. Do you want him as a striker though? Like, is he a striker? Like, I know he started his career as a striker, but now he's a winger. We would have to change a lot of things. Like, he's not the type of striker that I feel like a lot of us are envisioning. So to move him central, like, feels very strange. Maybe some people envision Martinelli playing through the middle and Leao on the wing. I don't know, but it just feels like not for us, not a signing for us. But he's a really good player. But I wish Neto wasn't. If Neto wasn't injury prone, he would just be literally like the perfect signing. And I still feel like in certain ways he is, and that's the winger that I would go after. I feel like he fits us a lot more. But yeah, Winning Way says even if Leao doesn't work back, wing backs will stay back, giving opponents less players in attack because they know to give this guy the ball is a major problem. Maybe. Arca says, no, but saying strikers can be a little lazy. I don't want Leao. Audrey says Leao and players of his ilk aren't Arsenal DNA. We are only going to get players who can sustain a mean press. If they think it's coachable, then fine. But Arteta's idea of luxury is a dual machine. I like that comment because I feel like know your manager. Like knowing your manager is to know that he's going to probably he's going to be more concerned about off the ball, our out of possession, what we look like, our press, our work rate, making sure that everybody knows that there are non-negotiables. I don't ever think we're going to be a Galactico type where we have a bunch of like star guys out there, or even go back to the days of Ozil just being like the main guy and Alexis. I just don't feel as though that's the direction that we're going in. And I get it. And I get why some people are just like, we cannot miss out on Leao, but I definitely think we can. I definitely think we can miss out on Leao. Keenan says we still need depth for Saka and striker. Nelly Trossard are just fine at left wing. Winning Way says Leao is better than Neto by far. I think his potential is again, it's all back to, I think it's all back to the ideal and projection of a player rather than the reality. I feel like the reality of Leao is a lot less exciting than who people project him to be or who he is on a rare basis. Where Neto, when he's playing, because he also has his issues with being injury prone, but when he is out there, he gives you consistent production on a regular basis. And you know what you're going to get from him. So it just depends on what you want, you know? Personally, I like the Rices and the Netos of the world rather than the Leaos and the Partes of the world, where I don't deal in ideals. I want to do what I know is true, what I'm actually getting, and what we're actually getting from those players is so tangible, where everything else is more idealistic or fantasy or what we see sometimes, and so I don't want too many of those guys in my team. Lexus says the Premier League has moved away from them luxury players who don't put a real shift in for the team, especially in top teams. I think would be so good at PSG, Leao. That's where I think he should go, to be honest. Can you envision him in the Premier League? I don't know if I can. He's a really good player. Don't get me wrong. The Premier League is such a, like you guys say, a physical work rate league where not a lot of teams are really floating these star guys around. And I feel like there's a reason for it. You kind of need the 11 players on the pitch. You kind of need them, So Leao's a great player, I just don't know if that's for us. I don't know, but if we got him, maybe Arteta would feel like he could make him into more of a workhorse, but I just don't see Arteta making any exceptions, for a player. Brian says I prefer Layout over Neto. Neto is made of crystal. He does have that big red flag against him. I will say that for sure. Neto would be the most perfect player for us if I wasn't worried about the injuries, and because Wolves want so much, I'm feeling less if you bought him, he's not sitting on the bench as much as I feel like people envision him sitting on the bench, and you would need him to be more available than what he is. So, I don't know. Live says Gikaris, Williams, Zubamindi, Onana, and Hato. You guys know I don't want Onana, but still some people want him. I cannot see him at Arsenal, but maybe at Arteta's Arsenal, he's perfect. Dual monster, not necessarily the most technical, more of an option for for a different moment, So, but I think for sure Zubamindi, and then between Williams and Neto, the striker is still a complete mystery. And if we do get a center back, I'm not sure it's going to be Hato now. I feel like what would be the point of bringing in Hato if Kivior is doing well now? I feel like we still need a center back. I feel like we need somebody that can do what Gabriel and Saliba does. If they go down, we are so cooked. We are so cooked because Ben White, Tommy, and Kivior, not a single one of them can replicate, I feel like, what Saliba and Gabriel do back there. They don't have the height and the physicality, the pace. They don't have any of that stuff, So maybe Tommy, maybe, but I still feel like no, so I still feel like that is a gap to fill, that I'd prefer to fill that gap rather than the left center back, left back, because we just have so many players that can play those positions. Like, we just don't need any more. Yo-Yo says Liao needs coaching up. He does need coaching, and Arteta would be a good coach for him. I can't see him at Arsenal. I don't know why. Trini says, remember that Neto's injury are due to high minutes. He will be a squad player at Arsenal. Will he? Will he? Do you think? At 80 million? Squad player? Are Arsenal in Man City's territory where they're spending 80 million on a squad player? I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. But yeah. But you guys, like, honestly, who knows? Somebody had tweeted out, I think it was Femi actually, that our Arsenal are really it'd be really difficult for Arsenal to mess up this summer window because there's so many options. And I'm like, I actually think it's very possible that Arsenal can screw it up. Not because we don't have smart people up there. I know that, we tend to make the right decisions, but you can go in the wrong direction this summer. I feel like the signings that we're going to make this summer are so important because I'm not sure we got it right in this past summer fully. I feel like we got some things right and some things very wrong, or some things that were not as good as they probably could have been. So my feeling on the summer window is that, like, it has to be spot on because the striker needs to be perfect, the midfielder needs to be perfect, the winger needs to make sense. So I do feel like Arsenal need to be very, very careful about what they do, because buying like an injury prone guy or somebody that doesn't have the pace up front, or somebody that maybe is too young and too much potential and doesn't work out, or God forbid buying Tony, those could all go very wrong, so yeah. But I am excited about the summer because, like I said, with Havertz, you could definitely see, especially with the striker, what Arsenal could be if that person was clinical and had more pace. That would be just lights out with the chances that we create. And so I am excited about that. But I am like cautiously optimistic that we're going to get it right. Because we should have been thinking about this for years now. Arsenal have not bought a striker, like a real striker, since Aubameyang, and we bought him in 2017. So it's been a minute, since we've been in the market for like a real bagsman. So we should have really been thinking about this, really thinking about it, and hopefully we get it right. But yeah, guys, we did an hour and 20 minutes, so we're gonna go ahead and get out of here. Obviously, we'll do a live tomorrow as well. And I'll see if I can get diluted on another show soon. But yeah, you guys, I've really enjoyed this. And make sure you guys like and subscribe on the way out. Get in the comments after and let me know what you guys thought about everything we've spoken about. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.